How do you feel things sit, a few days before opening round with the 23 that you'll be able to put on the park?
Yeah, I think we'll put a good team out there, guys that have had a good preparation. I think there's been a little bit of noise over the last few weeks, especially given we didn't play a couple of guys in our last practice game. And it would have been our preference for them to play. But the good news is they'll be available for this game and have had a really good preparation, albeit with a couple of hiccups in the last couple of weeks. But I've come to grips with the fact that I'm in that pessimistic stage of the preparation personally. I've never gone into a season thinking this has just been perfect. You're always in the mindset where you're thinking about managing risk and thinking about what could go wrong. And by its very nature, there's uncertainty when you haven't played a real game. We'll all feel a little bit more comfortable when we see some exposed form. So I could speculate as to how we're going and likely get it wrong. But even with that backdrop of personal pessimism, I think our players, with the preparation they've had, are really optimistic about what's possible this year.
So just to clarify, when you say those guys, that's Jezza, Bailey and Grime that all should play on Friday?
Yeah, that's right. So maybe there's a little bit more doubt, I think, on Grime at this stage, which will become clear pretty soon. But I think it's also worth saying we don't have a very high tolerance for pushing guys that aren't ready. So that, like, Jeremy and Bailey will clearly be ready from a physical perspective and they'll play. Grime, it's one of those situations where I think 15 years ago he'd be a certainty. Maybe 25 years ago he'd be a certainty because it was a badge of honour playing with these things. And we're much less tolerant of that stuff now. We don't ask players to play through things that might mean that it's going to hinder them later in the season and later in life, to be honest. So he had surgery on a thumb. He's got the all clear to play, but just because he can play doesn't mean he should.
Just on Jezza, and how's his off-season been? He's had a few obstacles now, and how ready is he to go this week?
Yeah, less obstacles than I think one would assume. So he was still suffering a little bit with that broken arm. It turned out that it was a pretty significant injury. But as always, with upper limb injuries, he was running, in his off season. So he's physically, from a running perspective, very well prepared. There's an argument to say he's as well prepared in that regard as he's ever been, certainly at his time at the Cats. And he was just about to get the go-ahead to play Origin with the arm when he had a little quad issue, which is actually a bit more of a kind of hip joint issue. So not really even, a soft tissue risk in the traditional sense. So I think in a perfect world you'd like those sort of players to have a little bit more contact training, but he's had enough to play. And as I said with Grime, we're not interested in just rolling him out and playing. We're interested in him being good enough to perform, and we're confident that he's ticked that box. I guess it's Tuesday as well, so we don't play until Friday. Again, these things are always best guesses.
Just on Jezza with the surgery, and 5 months after the grand final, he's still just integrating back into full contact training. That's a fair bit longer than usual. Was there something that went wrong with an initial surgery, or was it just a really significant break?
No, nothing that I know of. But I will make the observation, and this is a layperson's observation. I'm not pretending to be, an expert in this area. But when there's an off-season injury, we have the luxury of taking our time, and I'm starting to take the view that that's a better approach to take in season as well, even when you have the pressure of missing extra games. So my guess, because he'd had a pin in that arm, just fact check me on that, Mac, that's right, isn't it? They're calling it a pin. That the surgeon would say in season, okay, after a period of weeks maybe, a month, that he'd be cleared to play. Now the question is, would he be cleared to perform well? Would he still be enduring some things in season that maybe he shouldn't? So the fact that it took a little bit more time in the off-season, I think he's pointed to the fact that they wanted him to be squeaky clean. But I get it, like 5 months is a long time to still be feeling the effects of it. And I think it probably, my suspicion is it goes more to the fact that this wasn't a hairline fracture that, you know, he was able to play through. It was a serious injury that, you know, in retrospect, you look back and think the only time you should ever play through that sort of injury is in the second half of a grand final.
Chris, should we put Shannon Neal in the Jeremy Cameron Bailey Smith category?
Oh yeah, I even forgot about it. He was fine. He was probably they took all the precautions to make sure that there wasn't something more sinister there. But you know, they saw those things, but it amounts to a bruise.
What does your ruck setup look like for Friday night? You're still working through that, and just where does Reece Stanley sit with all this at the moment?
No, we're holding Reece back a little bit, so happy to say that he won't play. But no, we're not working through it. We're clear on the way we're going to set up. And I'll probably repeat what you're sick of hearing from previous years, that we don't think of our preferred ruck setup and then the alternatives behind that preference. It's more, we feel like one of our strengths is a variety of options in there. You know, not only with the way we pick the team, but once we pick the team, it's likely that we have 3, sometimes 4 guys that can all play in the ruck. And the 5th player on the bench is only an accelerant to that.
How have you seen the development of Mitch Edwards in particular throughout this pre-season?
Yeah, really liked it. And you know, it feels like, especially for the people that watch us a little closer, it's been a long time coming for Mitch and Toby Conway. I'm really confident we'll get there as well. He's a little bit slower, but those 2 guys give us room for optimism. If we could have them up and going at some point, we're going to have a ruck setup that's been different to the one we've gone with for the last decade and a half, probably since Brad Otten's retired. So, you know, really, really big guys who offer a point of difference to our incumbent ruckman.
Tom Stewart obviously played through a bit of injury last year with his wrist. I mean, how much did that play him throughout the year in 2025?
Maybe a little bit more than I thought, which is, again, instructive, because when you're in the season, you can be so focused, and I think players are as well, so focused on just coming up for the next game. And to a large extent, I think they're forced to spend their lives trying to kid themselves, you know, that things that are a problem are something that they can overcome. And that's what we admire about the really mentally strong players, because sometimes they can look, you know, those sort of injury sort of issues in the eye, so to speak, and find a way to get through them. And often it's only in retrospect that you think back. And again, I'll probably use the example of Jeremy Cameron in 23. Like, time over again, I would have probed a little bit more around the medical decision to say he's okay to play, and question whether it's actually the right thing for us in the medium term. But you know, again, it's easy to say now going to round 0. If you're telling me halfway through the season that Tom can play, but maybe you'd be better for a week off, it becomes a harder decision then than it is now in February. But yeah, it's interesting talking about that, and it just sort of helps us think about and how we should think about other players. You know, not just your best.
What do you make of the Gold Coast heading into this season? The bookies have them as the second favourite to win it all. Do you have them in that heavyweight category?
Oh, easily. Yeah, easily. And that's just, it's not any more complicated than just having a look at, you know, what they have built over a long period of time. Yeah, I don't. Who's third?
Sydney.
Right. Okay, Charlie Curno's going to be a big addition. So, but you know, I don't. I'm not sure how that. I'm not very good at that. It's sort of predicting where teams are going to be. But I guess what you do is you look at the talent available and the progression of those teams over a period of years. And yeah, it's hard to go past the 2 Queensland teams as being the favourite. I think that's logical, but not a given.
You used Mark O'Connor and O'Sheen to sort of minimise a lot of the weapons for Brisbane, for instance, during the finals. Do you look to give them a job on some Gold Coast Sun program?
Well, they'll be in the team. Well, Mark might be the best prepared AFL player in the game at the moment, given, you know, his Irish off-season, if you like. But we like the development of those guys. Mark's been around a while, so focus on O'Sheen a little bit more. We see his game evolving from a bit more of a defensive bias to one where, you know, he can really complement the strengths that we have. In particular, as a running team, he's just a supreme athlete in every sense of the description. He's not only got elite speed, but he's got great endurance and power as well. So, yeah, it's nice to know that we have those options, but I don't think that our coaching group's sitting here at the moment sort of pigeonholing the roles that those two are going to play.
What do you think their biggest weapon is? The Suns, you know, obviously they've got Anderson and now Petrarca in that midfield. Bailey Humphries dangerous half forward. You coach Ben King when he kicked 4 against WA. What do you think is probably their biggest weapon they can unleash on you guys?
Oh, well, I think if you're coaching that team, I think rather than sort of thinking about what their biggest strengths are, the thing that would excite them is the lack of weaknesses. So forward line looks potent. Ugle-Hagan only helps, you would assume. Like, the Victorian team was pretty strong, and it was basically the Gold Coast midfield, plus the full forward and the full back as well. So strong all over the place, and I would imagine picking that team's pretty hard. You know, they've got some, you know, not only first round picks, but, you know, pick 1, 2 and 3 that, you know, are sort of struggling to get into the team. So annoying for them, daunting for us.
How do you plan to use Tony Bruhn?
Well, we are confident, and we were confident sort of going into the 25 season that he was going to be an important midfield player for us. And we still think that's the case, but he was always going to be a flexible player as well. And we've taken the opportunity, you know, through our training to look at him in positions behind the ball. But yeah, it's just fantastic for him to get out there and be able to concentrate on footy. You know, after what is, you know, one of the most egregious injustices I can think of in the game. So to put that behind him, I think is positive for everyone.
And you've seen those obstacles that he's had to overcome, and then how excited are you to see his team into another season? We've seen glimpses throughout the pre-season. How excited are you?
I'm excited about it all, so I try not to individualise too much, and you know, we don't. I can say it's his first game, but he's really been sort of training, and you know, he played the practice game against Carlton. He's kind of ready to go. So, like, I think we'll all look back and think this was a small step. It's important that we don't overplay it.
Just on the injustice side of it, Chris, you know, how did you support Tanner through that year? Because I don't think we've maybe heard from you as much as it happened post the season, but supporting through that period and you know, seeing him day to day, how's he going?
Yeah, like I've said more than I want to anyway. I think it's largely a private matter, and I don't want to draw any more attention to it than he would like. So I supported him all the ways that you would imagine, but I don't want to walk you through it.
Chris, just circling back to
Thanks, Tom.
Mitch Edwards, the likelihood of a debutant on Friday night, not necessarily Mitch or a Polkinghorne or somebody along those lines.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking hard about that. So we because leading into the first game, you've always got more time than you do in season. We've got a pretty good idea of the way we're going to go, but there are a few balls in the air, and those guys have provided us some options that maybe we didn't think were as live 6 months ago. So I think like Warple and Bruhn coming back into the team tightens it up a little bit already, but definitely Edwards, Polkinghorne. Did you mention one other? No, those two in particular. They've done a great job of putting themselves in the frame.
Can I just think on
No, keep going.
Tyson Stengle, will you use VFL practice matches or will you use training to get him back to where you want him to be to play AFL football?
A combination of both. But I think, I'm not sure what the club's saying in terms of time frame, but this is a best guess. He's training well, the signs are really good, but we're not going to rush him back in. He'll certainly play in the VFL before he comes into the AFL team, but my guess, and this is probably more my hope, is that if he progresses the way he's training, he'll be available sooner rather than later. How much do I contradict what we're saying?
No, I think TBC today.
TBC.
Like everyone else.
I don't look at the injury report, so.